Alrighty, welcome everyone to Bitcoin in a Taproot world. Originally, this was going to be a MPC gang versus Team Script panel. Unfortunately, Rindell's under the weather and wasn't able to make it to the conference. The backstory to that was Rindell and I decided to make a fake Twitter fight to just drag everyone along and learn technically how Bitcoin works. And the ultimate resolution to that was that with Taproot, both teams can win. We have TapScript, we have Schnorr signatures for proper MPC execution, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion today.
Fantastic. Maybe should we introduce ourselves? That'd be sweet. I'll start. I'm Nick Farrow, working on a Frost hardware wallet, and we're using Taproot to make multi-signature much easier.
And I'm Rob Hamilton, co-founder and CEO of AnchorWatch. We're building regulated Bitcoin insurance when we built our own custody solution leveraging Miniscript and exploring now using Tap Miniscript in this Taproot world.
And I'm Kody. I'm the head of engineering ops at Fedi, and I'm a contributor to Fedi Mint. And so Fedi Mint is a federated Chaumian eCash mint. And we've got plans for how we're going to use Taproot, and we're going to go into this of like the development of Taproot and where it's getting to, such that we within Fedi Mint could use it for the on-chain wallet. But currently, because of some limitations, we can't use it yet.
Yeah, Nick, it would be like first going into Frostsnap, Frost, like this MPC, like what did we gain with Taproot, and why is what you're building different to how people did multisig up to this point?
Yeah, so there's two like main additions to Bitcoin that came with the Taproot upgrade, and one of them that I work with mostly is Schnorr signatures. And so maybe I give a little bit of a history on Schnorr signatures. They were invented by this German academic, I think in early 1990s. He patented them, which is absolutely insane, like crime against humanity, really. And it was unusable until 2010, when the patent expired. And the really nice thing about Schnorr signatures is they're actually, like, the maths behind them is actually, like, quite simple. And it means they're easy to understand and easy to, like, work with. And you can do kind of complex stuff with them and have, like, strong security guarantees with that. So using Schnorr signatures, where you're able to build things on top of it, more complicated sort of signing protocols, and the one I work with is called Frost, and this lets you do like T of N multi-signature. So you have N signers, and you need any T of those signers to work together. This is the MPC, multi-party computation, to work together to build a single Schnorr signature.
Yeah, and so traditionally in Bitcoin, if you wanted to, say, have a 2 of 3 multisig, the way that would be executed is you would on-chain have the 3 keys, right, and run an op-check multisig. But what's really great about leveraging Frost and Schnorr signatures is you can actually aggregate those keys with that multi-party computation off-chain, and on-chain it only looks like a single signature wallet. Yeah,
this gives a lot of benefits. So because we're not putting the conditions of the multi-signature into Bitcoin script, we're doing this multi-signature using mathematics sort of off-chain. We get some really neat sort of bonuses from this. For example, you have really good privacy. So when you look at the transactions on-chain, no one can tell that you're using a multi-signature. Whereas if you're using Bitcoin script, everyone can see, oh, it's a 3 of 5, a 5 of 8, which is like pretty bad for your privacy. It makes tracing your funds a lot easier. And you pay more for it because you're putting with script you're putting more stuff on chain. So with Frost we actually could do multisig very efficiently, and you save on fees. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap this, it's Bitcoin as it exists today. Our multisigs before Taproot are you have to put all the pub keys on chain. So if you're doing like a 2 of 3 multisig, the thing that goes on chain is 3 public keys and 2 signatures. And then with Taproot, we have the possibility with Schnorr signatures to be able to do a threshold signature where the thing you're doing behind the scenes is you're doing those 2 of 3, but the thing that goes on chain is just one signature, and it's indistinguishable from a 1 of 1, right? But so when we first came out with Taproot, the thing that we didn't have was the ability to do Frost inside of that key path spend for it, because like the security proofs weren't there, the tooling and stuff wasn't there. Like only recently have we gotten to the point where there's a security proof now for Frost in the Multisig, so you can do a threshold signature on the key path spend. But so the stuff right now that we're seeing with most people doing multisigs with Taproot is using Multisig, which is a M of M, right? So you can do like a 2 of 2. You can do a 2 of 2 or a 3 of 3 or a 4 of 4. You can't do these threshold signings that like you can do with Frost. And so for Fedi, for example, the model that we have is that you set up a federation where there's like 3 of 4 guardians and one of them can be actively malicious, right? So you need to be able to do a 3 of 4. So up until now, we haven't been able to really use Taproot for it because the only thing we had proofs for, the only thing we had tooling for after the soft fork was doing the M of M. But now we're right at the point where we can start making moves with Frost, which is what Nick has been doing. And then after that, there's another thing called Roast, which Frost, it says you can do the signature as long as nobody's actively malicious and trying to interrupt the signing rounds. So it works really well with like hardware wallets, right? So it's like I control all the different devices. I'm not trying to mess my own signatures up. So Frost works very well with that. But for Fedi, we need something called Roast, where someone can be actively malicious. And if they're being actively malicious, they still can't interrupt the signing rounds. But all the tooling, all of the code for that is really just hitting right now because we're waiting on security proofs that are there. So now, hopefully, we're going to start seeing a lot more development on Taproot for doing more fancy things across what we normally do for multisigs with like the Liquid Federation or Fedi or Fedi or like some of these multi-institutional custodians. Now that we've got the security proofs in place, now that we're starting to get the tooling in place, I really hope that we're going to start seeing some more rapid development along there. And I know we're going to do it with Fedi. So. Absolutely,
yeah. And I think it'd be a missed opportunity to at least discuss if you're dealing with an MPC structure in Taproot using either Multisig or Frost or Roast, the part of that off-chain computation is the nonce negotiation, right? So with like my voice is killing me. With Frostsnap, what does that look like for abstracting that away for users and giving them some sort of sense of understanding that there's this extra information I now need to manage, and how does that get done in a way where you don't have to be a cryptographer to feel safe to use it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as Rob mentioned, with Frost, you have to, when you're starting a signing round, every party in the signing round sort of has to agree upon who's going to be signing and what nonce they're going to be using. And so this means that there has to be sort of some coordination in the signing session. And the way we do this is we use the phone to sort of keep track of which nonces have been used and which ones it's going to use next for a different set of signing devices. Yeah.
Yeah, and then for Fedi, for example, we have a module that we've been playing around with, which we use. It's called Roaster, which is like the kind of earliest possible way of starting to do like a roast-based Schnorr signature. Currently, we don't use it for the wallet. We just use it for like the federation if it wants to like sign a Nostr event or something. Where, like again, it's that for this nonce decision of which one do we use next, this is the point where it becomes very complicated for if you have someone who's actively trying to disrupt the session, right? And so for like what we do, it's the guardians first agree on what nonce they're going to use through the consensus mechanism that we already have within Fedi, and then afterward, only then can they do the signature, right? But it's like, it's still something where it's like we need more development toward it, and then once we have it in a more reliable place, then we could potentially start using it for the wallet. But that's, yeah.
Yeah. Like, for you guys as users, you'll actually never have to worry about this stuff. Like, it'll just all happen behind the scenes. The wallet will be handling the nonces. The devices will be like, it knows which ones to expect. It'll be checking that they're the right ones. So as users, like, people like talk about it as if it's a bit of a scary thing, like you've got to make these nonces like line up, but if the engineers, like us guys, we program it right, hopefully you guys don't have to worry about it, and it'll all work smoothly.
I think it's like an interesting thing to think about as well, leveraging the other part of what Taproot unlocked, right, with Merkleized abstract syntax trees. I could see a world even where we'll also want to talk about rotating keys off chain, but with Frost, you can actually with Taproot, with using Mast, you could have different spending conditions as well within that script path, right? And I think about a world where you could have it be a 2 of 3 Frost key over here, then maybe like a 1 of 5 one over here, like a 3 of 5 one over here, and you can have different like contingency spending conditions. And this is a thesis I think a lot of us talk about, is Bitcoin being programmable money. That we hit this first use case, like we're finally, Musig's like standardized in use now. Even the ledger is supporting on a beta library the use of Musig. Like all of these other opportunities start really complementary, like synergizing together to have really robust spending conditions in different ways you can actually access your money.
I was wondering if maybe you guys could help me understand this a little bit more. So there were these two main components of Taproot. One of them was adding Schnorr signatures, which was the signature scheme that the patent expired on. And then the other side of Taproot was this TapScript. And so, like, how is TapScript better than regular script? Like,
yeah. So traditionally, if you were using something like a pay-to-script hash, pay-to-witness script hash, if you wanted to have more than one spending condition, it all has to be published on chain every event, which is one, privacy. You stick out like a sore thumb. Additionally, from a fee amount, you're committing to all of these possible spending conditions up front, and it's inefficient. Whereas with TapScript, you create a Merkle tree with different spending paths, and you can reveal going down the Merkle tree and being able to say, this is the actually spending condition I want. You don't have the context of all of the other leaves. You only get to see what I'm actually putting on chain. And that's just another way to bring more robust ways of using your Bitcoin address. And it shifts the paradigm a lot of, this is my address, it could be spent this way, to this address has a library of many different ways you can spend from the wallet.
So if I understand correctly, like you can have a bunch of different sort of conditions for, or like different pathways for how you can spend your Bitcoin, and then do you only reveal the one that you're using?
Yeah, you have to reveal down to show like the revealing down as far as the tree you need to go to show that you can provably commit to it. So with Taproot, every single address is actually a raw public key on chain, right? And that's why you can leverage something like a Frost or a Roast, and it looks like a single sig because there's no further things to redeem. If you want to go down like the control block, you have to walk down the tree to show that you previously committed to that spending condition. And this is where it gets really interesting too. So Taproot addresses have two ways you can spend: the key path, which we've been talking about with Frost and Roast, and the script path. And if you're designing all of these interesting like ways that you want to be able to spend your money on that script path, you either need to make sure your key path is something that you know for a fact is an M of M probably, right? Or maybe you can use something like Frost. But if you don't want that to be an option, you only want to commit to the other branches, you need to make sure that key path is provably unspendable so that you know that you don't have a single sig like backdoor sitting there in your very advanced like custody structure that you're mapping everything out on.
Yeah, I think the most interesting production use case of this right now has been the BitGo model. And so BitGo does institutional level custody where they hold a key and then you hold two keys. You have one that you normally use and then one is the backup key, right? So like I, as an institution, I want to have BitGo be one of my partners for this. The structure of that Taproot transaction whenever I'd hold my keys would be on the key path spend, they're doing a Frost signature, sorry, a Musig signature, which is 2 of 2, which is the key I normally use and BitGo's normal key, because in 99% of circumstances, those are the two that we're going to end up using. So let's try to take advantage of the key path spend. But then let's say that BitGo disappears. Then within that same structure, I can go down the script path spend, and those have the 2 of 2 options where I can use my two keys, and so even if BitGo disappears, then I can still do that. And for like AnchorWatch, you can probably end up with some sort of interesting structures like that, where your day-to-day spending, you go down the key path, but then in the event that AnchorWatch disappears, or like you pass away and you have to leave your coins to your kids or something, they have something where it's like time-locked a year in the future where they can go down the script path spend to redeem the keys.
No, that's exactly right. And shout out to Brandon Black, who I think as he was leaving BitGo, designed it and deployed all of that. And that's a perfect way to kind of talk about it because they're doing a lot of high transaction volume. It's saving on fees. It gives you that contingency if something were to go wrong. You have these like trap doors you can reveal to spend your money, and it's really robust. And while we're doing shout outs also to Jesse Posner over at Spiral, who's been doing a lot of great work with getting the Frost spec. And I heard the Frost spec just got, it's like RFC, like it's all dialed in now. So we're at a point now we can put it into full production so people beyond you leading on the bleeding edge with Frost hardware wallets can actually start playing with it too with confidence.
We've been at Frostsnap. We've been I don't know, not really reckless, but we've been sort of making our own implementation of the Frost signing protocol, and it's sort of we're just doing it as best that we see that fits our application. But more recently, people have been working on sort of more standardizing the Frost protocol. So there's sort of two main things recently. One is what Rob mentioned, which is the RFC spec, which is not focused specifically on Bitcoin, but it sort of like standardizes Frost signing for all cryptographic applications. And another really cool thing that's been happening lately is the Blockstream guys have been working on a draft BIP for doing key generation with Frost. I think the Multisig ones have been out for a while. So Multisig, just a reminder, is like M of M, like 5 out of 5, 3 out of 3. Whereas Frost is like you can do the threshold, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5. And so, yeah, the Blockstream guys have just made a draft BIP for doing key generation for Frost, which is very exciting, and we're going to slowly move our implementation to match theirs.
Yeah, so I guess with our remaining time talking about what are the biggest things, I guess, that we need to start increasing that developer adoption? I think it all comes downstream from the cryptographers, right? They're the ones who put out the security proofs. And you mentioned this earlier, Kody, the security proof around you can kind of do an inception where you can have a Frost key that aggregates to a Multisig. So you could have a 2 of 3 and a 3 of 5 come together and then look like a single, like you can use Multisig as well. So you can kind of like nest these things. Just in general, thinking about applications you're building, I know Roast is what you're looking for to actually have those adversarial mindsets. Like what is like on your dream list if you could, control all the Bitcoin developer resources? Like what are you looking for before you take the leap in launching this stuff on Fediment?
Yeah, so we're like a Rust shop, right? So the thing that we've been waiting for, and that was also apparently landed very recently, was the Multisig 2 support within the SecP ZKP libraries. And so this is like, just generally speaking with Taproot, right, is that we get the soft fork, it activates. Immediately afterward, you see like the biggest adoption within Taproot was stuff like ordinals and inscriptions, which was something that hadn't been foreseen originally, right? And so now there's a lot of stuff where like we knew we were going to get there with doing, now that we had Schnorr signatures, and there's like a whole plethora of different interesting tricks that you can do with them, like tweaking, all that kind of thing, right? And so, but when Taproot originally landed, all the tooling for that hadn't really been built out yet, and there were still some missing security proofs, like I said, right? And so now we're at the point where the security proofs are landing, some of the BIPs are getting finalized around doing it, and so like the adoption of it, I think, is going to be much more widely. It's going to be much more widely adopted now that those are in place, because for most developers, like when they have to do it, they're kind of already using some sort of tool set, right? So it's like, I have to use the SecP library, or like, we're not all super fancy like you guys writing our own implementations of these. We have to kind of wait for it to get adopted by something where we've already got like a production use case for this. We're already using this dependency, so that dependency needs to get updated. Like we're just getting to the point where those are starting to come along, especially the other ones that are big for the script path spending, right? It's like, yes, you can do interesting script, but like, you can also like write interesting assembly, but still people want to use something like a higher level language for it. There's some really interesting script path spending frameworks that are coming out now, right? So like mini script support for Taproot, like Salvatore has been working on like all of his masked stuff for having like an actual structure for being able to think about and describe these transactions and kind of prove before you lock funds to it, I know what this is going to do, right?
Yeah, this is when you depart from that single sig world, you start having to maintain this backup of like an output descriptor, right? And so Miniscript also has its own tap Miniscript version, so it can leverage not like other small details as well from Taproot. Is instead of using opcheck multisig, it's using checksigad. Right, and having that all just natively clean up nicely, as well as when you start getting into these more complicated spending conditions, you have certain things like the minimal if rule, which is if you have an if statement, making sure it's either a 0 or 1. And these are all like little small corner cases that ultimately can get abstracted away, so you can just leverage something like a tap mini script. And as a developer, like as a huge shout out using Bitcoin Dev Kit, we're also a Rust shop on our side. They're a descriptor native library that really cleanly plugs into all of this, and it allows, as I always say, like a mid-curve app dev like myself to be able to kind of leverage what all of the real wizards are building to be able to kind of, push user experiences and different product use cases forward.
Just back on what Kody was saying, like a lot of people are waiting for these this wider support in the sort of the core libraries like SecP, ZKP libraries. Add Multisig, add Frost, add all these exciting sort of things you can do with cryptography. But one of the really nice things about Schnorr signatures is, as I mentioned before, they're actually quite easy to understand in comparison to ECDSA. And so, even though people say not to roll your own cryptography, they're actually quite accessible to explore and play around with as an engineer or developer, because that the mathematics is actually quite straightforward. The equations are quite small, and you can do a lot of fun stuff with them. And you can just you can be a little bit reckless, like doing your own stuff and just trying some fun stuff out. I think last year I made a blind Schnorr signature implementation, which was a lot of fun. And so what that was is this allowed like a server to have a Nostr account, and the server could like sign something blindly for you. So you could like write a message on the website, blind it. You write a Nostr event, blind it on the website. The server would sign it, having no idea what it signed, and then you would receive the blinded signature, and you would unblind it, and then you'd be able to post this Nostr note under the server's Nostr account, and the server had no idea what it signed, and it's kind of like the same tech that Kody's Fedi mint uses for the eCache, the blind eCache.
I think Nostr is a really great use case because it's also leveraging Schnorr. I saw like the Froster project you're talking about, as Reindel coined the term, like the shitpost DAO, that you could just have like a company organization. You can distribute keys in such a way where you can only commit to events if a group does it. I imagine that also helps. You said before, like we were already messing around with it on Roast. You can actually have, since it's not literally the money or the eCache and everything else, you can have a little bit more wiggle room and using that as a playground to start putting reps in and getting experience with it before you kind of roll it out to the money layer of the application.
Yeah, so like one of those first examples, for example, on Nostr, which we could use now that we have like the roaster module and stuff like that, would be there's like an issue when you're trying to use like an eCache mint. There's this problem of, okay, you have to trust the mint because the mint is a custodian, right? And so currently the way that people have been doing mint discovery is based on other people attesting to that mint. But now you could have, for example, the Federation, they can sign messages and they can attest to things, just kind of like arbitrary information that you might also need in order to kind of fully trust them. And so that would be something where, for example, a Federation could start and then announce itself, and you could see the Guardian's Nostr identities if they wanted to, but also they can publish from the actual Federation so that you know that even over Nostr that like what it's saying is actually correct versus something of like other people attesting to it. So it really helps with establishing that first web of trust for like some of these more public mints where people want to be able to discover them over social protocols like Nostr.
It's like a multisig for the social media of the Fedi mint. And so when the Fedi mint's like updating or changing, they can instead of it coming from like one guardian, like trusting one guardian to say, oh, you download this update or do this. You don't know if that guardian's like trying to do something dodgy. But if they're in this sort of multi-signature for their social media, it's some quorum of the signers of the Federation attesting to that, whatever they're trying to do. Yeah. It's just very cool.
No, it's great. Like when you think about this idea of like non-individuals, once you leave, this is my money, I'm in control of all the steps along the way, like this linking with Nostr to have a corporate identity and like a group identity and being able to still have those cryptographic attestations make a lot of sense, like you said, for webs of trust, because unless you know the guardians, and the whole design of it is you don't have to know who the guardians are, it's really nice to have a quick cryptographic check of this is an official bulletin and someone's not making me do something I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, and just kind of like the last bit for this, let's maybe cover. So this is like just like a fundamental thing about self-custody that I was trying to make the point for, is that any self-custody mechanism that you establish that's resilient to you being in an accident, right? So let's say I have my seed plate, I know where it's hidden or something, right? Then, but like I'm in an accident, like something happens and suddenly I can't recover it. My wife or my family or my lawyer or something needs to be able to do that. The fundamental issue with this is when you're talking about self-custody is that any self-custody mechanism that you establish resilient to you being in an accident implies a threshold custody mechanism that can be met without you, right? And so this is something that Taproot really helps us enable, where me on a day-to-day basis, I can be using the key path for it, but then I have some sort of backup mechanism. So like this is like, I know what AnchorWatch has been working on for a long time, right? Is that on a day-to-day spending for it, I can use the key path, but then I have the resiliency of being able to, in the event that something happens, like, you know, you, my wife, my lawyer can like all come together a year later and still recover all my funds. And so like there's a lot of Bitcoin right now, which in the event that something happens, like may be unrecoverable, that hopefully with the wider adoption of Taproot and these different resiliency mechanisms, like can still end up being used by your kids, by like everyone else. And once you have that resiliency, it also becomes something that institutions and larger entities where they this is like a no-fail mission for them, like they just can't lose funds, right? Yeah. And so once you have these options, it becomes much more inviting and easier for them to start adopting and incorporating it in.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's part of what we're doing, but you know, this idea of multi-institutional custody, large corporate entities, and being able to mitigate and distribute risk, and figuring out, making sure that the money has many different ways that it could be spent and recovered. Whether you're also employing time locks, or you're doing, you know, you're just using different like your own trusted friends. I think this is something that is over the coming years going to be the base standard going forward, because you can structure it in a way where there's very little downside to add a really large asymmetric upside of resiliency of your money. Since the data is the money, encoding more rules and using Bitcoin as that programmable money is a win for not just enterprise corporate use cases, but individuals as well. Being able to have someone where if the money hasn't moved in a year, my wife and my lawyer can move the money in the event that you know I'm no longer around. This is just going to be the standard for, and also using technology to facilitate the estate planning and not you know, having to today just legacy 2 of 3 multisig, 3 of 5, whatever it is, has been around since 2011, right? And pay to script hash is 2014. So you know, Taproot really opened up a lot of opportunity to be able to kind of take that to the next level and have Bitcoin be around for 1,000 years and knowing that it can be kept safe.
Yeah, I'm really glad you touched on this. Like the inheritance stuff, I feel like it's a really big one. I meet people all the time who like their inheritance plan is like a treasure trail for their loved ones. Like it's like, oh, go find this seed phrase and then go find this passphrase and then, you know, go ask this person how to use, you know, Sparrow Wallet, or it's still like pretty difficult for the average person to even set up, and then it's even more difficult for the recipients of that inheritance to actually use it. And maybe I can touch on this. One really cool thing we've been looking into in Frost is, and Jesse Posner's been doing a lot of work on, is the ability to add other signers into an existing multisig. So because Frost is very based in mathematics and not in Bitcoin script, you can do some like really neat tricks where you can go from like a 2 of 3. You can actually 2 of those signers can work together to create a new key share. So you can go from a 2 of 3 to a 2 of 4, or you know, a 2 of 3 to a 2 of 8, or whatever you like, and you can actually do this really cool stuff. And what we're looking to do at Frostsnap is be able to create different access policies to your funds. So you can imagine that you've got your 2 of 3 for your cold storage, and then maybe you could make a separate like 3 of 3 for inheritance, and these could be completely separate keys that access the same wallet, same funds, and you can give these keys to, you know, friends, family, people to look after them for you in your absence, and hopefully in a way that's really easy for you to do so. And
just mechanically, that allows you to move funds, ownership of a UTXO on-chain without an on-chain transaction, right? You can, if I were to be malicious in a 2 of 3, you two can generate a new key set with someone else, and then if you destroy your original secret, like I'm now rotated out, and it doesn't require that on-chain transaction, which is a whole new way of just thinking about custody and trading models and everything else that Bitcoin's being used for today.
Yeah, that stuff's really exciting. There are some like small caveats with that one. Like if Kody and I like we say we're going to rotate our keys away from yours, Rob, but maybe I lie and I don't actually delete the old one. Then later on, I could catch up with you and we could just sweep the funds.
Key deletion is always, you can't prove that you delete something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're...
Yeah, and I think this is the last thing, so maybe we can do some closing bits after this. But for Fedi, this is exactly the same, because it's the same thing I think now with people when they set up their self-custody mechanisms for their multisigs. It's once you do it, that's like set. And then in order to do the rotation, either you have to sweep the wallet, where you lose some of the privacy benefits, because now you're like linking all your UTXOs, unless you spend a bunch to do a bunch of on-chain transactions for moving them over. But for Fedi, when you set up a federation right now, because we don't have the key rotation for it, the guardians are also set, right? And so once we have the pieces in place in order to start doing key rotation, that becomes super like a super valuable and resilient mechanism for, I set up this federation and I'm not locked into it forever. It's that I can start rotating out, I can bring in a new guardian, I can upgrade my security model, I can downgrade it if necessary, right? So it's very exciting stuff. But yeah,
it's exciting. So I guess closing comments, we're running a little over.
Yeah, get excited for Taproot stuff. Like, it has been a few years in the making, and you know the upgrade was like a few years ago now, but it is coming, and the stuff we can do with it is absolutely insane, and it's going to make the Bitcoin user experience just so much better. So yeah, get excited for it, and if you're a developer, I encourage you to dive into some of the stuff, have a play around with some of the cutting edge stuff, you know, do some reckless things. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Where can I buy one of those Frostsnaps?
Hopefully towards the end of the year. Yeah.
Exciting. Awesome. Yeah, I just ultimately, making Bitcoin programmable with money is the goal. And I think these are a really robust toolkit to get very creative for products and applications, not just for businesses, but for sovereign individuals as a use case.
Yeah. Fedi's hiring, so any Rust engineers or anybody who wants to work on this, would love to talk to you afterward. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much.